All right, my name is Darius Sharif, and this is my reflection as a future educator. I'm a PE major, so I'm going to try my best to tie everything I talk about today back to being a PE teacher. All right, so some of the main topics I'm going to talk about is the role of educators in resistant oppression, knowledge required for intellectual resistance, my personal educational journey, and strategies for personal empowerment and intellectual freedom. I'm going to do this by connecting the text, works, and quotes of Jacob Carruthers, W.B. Du Bois, and James Baldwin to support my ideas. So, first things first, the role of educators in resisting oppression. So, I want to talk about governance first. Governance refers to the shared rules, understandings, and leadership that guides education. Effective governance, aka doing governance effectively, could create classrooms that challenge oppressive ideologies and foster student empowerment, both of which are important to ensuring that our students become the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be. The educator's responsibility in the classroom. So, as educators, we are not just the suppliers of information; we are the leaders who shape how students think and engage with the world. We are basically the most important people in their life for them to become the most successful people and versions of themselves possible. So it's up to us to become the best educators that we can possibly be, so we can ensure our students are the best that they can possibly be. To do that, we need to provide spaces for critical thinking and challenge systems that promote cultural and intellectual oppression. Critical thinking is one of part of is very important. It's part of being fully literate. So it's important that we provide spaces that students can be critical thinkers in. Du Bois says that education should teach facts and empower students to think independently, which is something that a lot of schools are not really doing right now, and that's something that I want to help buck that trend, turn that trend around. Du Bois also says that education should help equip students with the tools to challenge systemic domination. All right, we need the systemic domination, aka what the white people did to us. We need to be able to challenge that and break free of that. To tie that back to PE, I need to use sports and movement as a tool for inclusion. I can do that by encouraging diversity in sports. For example, I want to get more black people playing like baseball and softball. We see them big old contracts that the baseball players is getting, but black people, American black people, they're not playing that. We're missing out on that money. I know we could be good at baseball, so I want to try to get us into that space. Also, I'm from Michigan. Hockey is probably one of the biggest sports in Michigan. Yet there's no black people. And there's a lot of black people in Michigan, but there's no black people playing hockey in Michigan. I want to try to buck that curve too. I want to try to see if I can get some black people in there, not just in Michigan but across the country. I want to address some barriers. I want to ensure students, regardless of gender, race, and ability, have equitable access to opportunities in my gym. I make sure everyone has what they need to succeed in my gym to become more physically literate, and develop the skills and movement concepts and stuff like that, knowledge in my PE class that they will learn and become the best, most physically literate individuals they could possibly be. Um, I want to make sure I also teach students to analyze the social, economic, and racial dynamics in sports. I think I could do that by doing discussion boards, having them really think about like how it is what it is. Second part I want to talk about is knowledge required for intellectual resistance. Educators, they need to recognize how systemic forces have shaped education, basically how education got to how it got, and find where the problems are in that and try to break free of that. All right. In order to do that, you have to identify what the problems are. Um, some African ways of knowing. So these are some things that educators can start looking to learn more. So they got oral traditions. So I looked up the Griots, who originated from West Africa. They are storytellers and oral historians who tell stories about the past and pass them down to future generations. And they're still telling stories to this day. So I want to try to reach out to, just to learn more about old African culture and heritage. Um, Carruthers argues that African-centered education is a form of resistance against oppression. Our oppressors, they didn't want us. They don't want us to know what our ancestors knew all way back then. All right, by tapping back into our old ways, we can become more literate and more whole, so we can be like how Africans was back in the old empires. All right, so we can get back to that. In order to do that, we need to tap back into our old ways. Education should not rely solely on European epistemologies, but we need to integrate African philosophies, and I want to do that in my physical education course. I'm still learning my physical education class as a teacher. Still learning how I'm going to do that, but that's one of my goals. To tie this again back to PE, we need to recognize that movement is a form of knowledge and cultural expression. So physical movement embodies historical, social, and cognitive knowledge through like dancing and athletic practices, and they carry down wisdom and knowledge about survival, communication, discipline, and strategy, all of which are important to becoming uh, basically like productive members of society. And I also want to identify movement and cultural representation, like I just said, which we can do that doing African dances, learning indigenous sports, and even like, modern hip hop or jazz and stuff like that. Dances, like, hip hop dances, tap dances, all that. Um, we can do that, and by doing that, we can preserve, reclaim, and honor their heritage and passing down cultural knowledge to future generations so that we can all become literate and have a good sense of identity as African Americans. Um, in order to incorporate some stuff like this in PE, I want to start teaching like some of these dances, traditions, maybe some songs, dancing to some songs, some old African songs to help connect with the history, identity, and empowerment of African Americans. Um, Next, I want to talk about my educational journey. So I'm from West Bloomfield, which is right outside of Detroit, and historically it's been majority white, but in the past about 10 years, it's more and more, it's been becoming more and more diverse, more and more African Americans have pulled up. And so because of that, I have both had inclusive and exclusionary educational environments. It has gotten better as I have gotten through the ranks. Like once I got to like senior year, like it was like real inclusionary. Like everything was more inclusionary. And a great example of that is my boy, Mr. Watson. So he was my African American history teacher my senior year. That course had just been installed that year, and he first taught me, or first got me into Du Bois and and Carruthers and stuff like that. Now we didn't go that deep into it, but just by doing that, it it uh it basically it basically changed my perspective on my education. What's up? Yeah, it's changed my perspective on education. It saddened me to know that since that was an elective course, not everybody got to learn about all that, and so it was kind of sad. But it definitely shifted my perspective on education. And I think if we can get more people to learn more about African American history, stuff like that, it will shift everybody's perspective on education. So as a PE teacher, I need to understand how sports and movement can be a tool for exclusion. So that could be like unequal access to the resources, funding, opportunities needed to become successful. But I also have to recognize how sports and movement can be a tool for empowerment. And you do that by developing confidence, discipline, and leadership skills. So I can use movement to bridge the cultural gap and foster inclusion in my gym. Um, I also need to teach PE with awareness. So need to make sure students feel valued, represented, and empowered through movement, which is which is important. That's very very important as a PE teacher. That's one of my goals. That should be everybody's goal as a PE teacher actually. Um, Next, strategies for personal empowerment and intellectual freedom. I need to basically empowerment is a process that lasts forever. It's ongoing, and everybody, all educators need to know that, or else what's the point of being an educator? You're not going to become the best educator you could possibly be. What's the point of doing anything if you're not going to be the best version that you could be in that thing? So that means it requires continuous learning, self reflection, and I need to keep on challenging dominant narratives. So strategies so I can grow as an educator that I have. I want to embrace some African philosophies, use movement as storytelling, like how they did back in Africa back in the day, or even like on the plantations, like how they would use movement as storytelling, like dancing, singing, and all that. so they can become, they can feel like not subhuman. Yeah, self-expression through movement. So I want them to realize the cultural relevance and significance of dance and sports, not just in America, but all around the world. I need to seek out diverse perspectives. So both you, Professor Rainey, and Dr. Craddock have taught me that it is important to become culturally relevant educators because that is the best way, and some would say probably the only way, to get the most out of your students. Like you said, in order to learn, you first got to start with identity. Without identity, there is no learning. So that being become a culturally relevant educator is the best way to do that. I need to learn about. I want to learn more about global movements and traditions, and also how I can ensure diversity in the curriculum. So not just teaching stuff from America and Europe, but also like Africa, Latin America, Asia. Also, Mr. Fenimore, who's a PE professor here, he's done a good job of teaching us some games and dances and stuff from all over the world. One example is Teninkling, which is a Philippines dance. So we learned how to teach that, do it, perform it, all that, and I think I am gonna incorporate that into my gym because it teaches balance, coordination, teamwork, stuff like that, and rhythm. So I want to find more of those that I could incorporate in. Again, I need to resist dominant thought. I need to find out and really examine how educational policies and curricula reinforce oppression. And if I can find out how it enforces oppression, I can figure out how I can break the oppression. Um, Again, self reflection and lifelong learning is very key. So I'm going to keep a journal to reflect on my teaching methods and biases to see what I can improve, what went well, what didn't go well, and see like how I can make things better. I want to engage in peer discussions to challenge my perspectives and improve my teaching. Again, I could do this with other teachers, with students, or with students' parents. Um, I want to apply these strategies to teaching by creating a classroom of equity and empowerment where students feel free to express themselves. I want my classroom to be fun, safe, equitable, and empowering. I think that's if I can hit all four of those in my gym, everybody will have a great time in my gym. I want to encourage students to critically examine the role of movement in their own lives and their families' lives and their friends and all that. And so yeah, so Baldwin, I know Baldwin, he was saying something about education. It needs to prepare students to challenge societal norms and transform the world. I couldn't agree more with that. And also, like, that relates to what Du Bois says that the struggle of being black in an oppressive system is central to intellectual resistance. Um, which goes with also black students often navigate an educational system that does not fully validate their identity. Again, without identity, there is no learning. So those are basically saying we need to ensure that we are getting our students to really understand their identity, so that, and I need to be able to relate to their identity when I'm teaching, so that they can really learn and become literate. Education should make students aware of injustice and encourage them to challenge the status quo. Pretty sure that's from Baldwin. Yeah, that's just important. Like, they need to understand injustices so that they can like get over that. They can fight free. They can break free and become better than that. They can beat the injustice and be better than the status quo. And I know Carruthers. He said that African knowledge systems and reclaiming that, tapping back into our African knowledge systems is crucial for resisting intellectual oppression. All right. To tie it back to PE, I need to acknowledge and integrate diverse movement traditions into physical education. I need to encourage students to analyze the social, economic, and political role of sports in society. Again, just for them to understand why sports is important across the world and why it's important to understand, and why it could be beneficial to get good at sports and get more money, stuff like that. I also want to use this, make sure again, as I said all the way this whole time, but I want to reinforce this, that PE is a space for empowerment rather than exclusion. That's very important. PE is supposed to be a fun class. I don't want people to feel excluded in my PE course. Yeah, that's basically it. Thank you.